take a very, very hard look at what you mean by rising rates. We've got the monetary banks worldwide gonna move, which I have advocated against strongly. And then we've got accelerant. We've got the price of gasoline at the pumps worldwide that's about to go like this. So last week we were talking about, or the last couple of months or whatever period of time, you're talking about inflation. So you're talking about rising rates to hamper inflation. Bad idea in a moonshot economy on the backside of a pandemic, notwithstanding. Well, you just threw, pardon the pun, a bunch of gas on that fire, because now you've got the rising oil and gas, and the price at the pump. Your disposable income just went like this. I don't care how much your monthly disposable income is. It's going to take a big hit. And so if you're asking me what leaders should be thinking about, product or service, people are going to shift from being value conscious, saying, oh, $99 for, say, a tax return. A month ago, he would have said, well, I get, what else do I get? Or are they going to do a good job? Or is it going to get done on time? And looking at the value proposition behind that price. Now, they're going to be price conscious. $99 to get my tax return done. QuickBooks wanted to charge me, or whatever, TurboTax wanted to charge me $140. I'm going there. The decision's made based on price. So consumers and businesses alike are going to start to look more at price versus value. And it's going to be that way for a while, because we're in an asymmetric war here, and we're practicing asymmetric warfare.
That's great insight. I very much appreciate it. And that's why we do this. I'm here as always with Scott Connors. He is the Chief Change Officer at Crankset Group. And this is Leadership Line of Sight, where we're hoping to empower leaders at every level. My name is Taylor. You're the Chief Change Officer. I'm going to continue to be the Marketing Strategist at Gravidia, and a serial entrepreneur that's interested in all things from the top to the bottom. And really, in response to what you were just saying there, Scott, we are talking a little bit about how leaders are going to respond to this inflation, and what is a reaction and what is a response. And man, it's going to take a lot to decode. Really, oil is something it's the forefront right now. Everybody feels it in their household because they go to the gas pumps, right? I had a friend who did this joke on Facebook where he was talking about somebody across a gas station across the street was, must not have raised the price on their pumps, and must have changed it. But he wrote "see more" at the end of his post, making it look, and everybody was clicking on it to try to see where the gas station was. And it was just like a joke. And it's interesting to hear all these things from different places, because depending on where you are, it might depend on how you feel about this. Yeah. Like I was talking to a friend in Texas. He was saying that oil coming out of the ground there starts to make money when it gets over about $25 a barrel. Yeah. And now this is something that's really important to everybody around him. Yeah. I'm from the little Texas of Canada. Alberta is hardworking farm folk in the oil industry. Yeah. And what we're wondering is what happened to that pipe everybody was talking about?
Yeah. Gone. We're stopped production, for all kinds of reasons, the political included. Here's the interesting point. The United States of America accounts for 20% of oil supply by country. Canada is 6%. Saudi Arabia is 12%, and Russia is 11%. So we're only talking about 11% disruption. And so at some point, the 110, 111, 112 speculation will start to flatten in the markets. And as we all know, that oil prices are based on futures. And so my opinion is, if we're trying to, manage crisis management, if you will, on prices, is they're up, the barrels are up, and now I believe they'll stabilize. So I think we've seen all the inflation we're going to get in oil and gas I might be wrong. My gut's telling me that's what I would bet on making business decisions.
Yeah, and I hope you're right, because normally if it's going to rise and go crazy from here, it's more based on fear than anything else. And with a war, we might actually just see it start to move in that emotional way rather than moving in relationship to the market. And that's just like scarcity. Remember when we had David Fried on and he was telling us about the actual secret behind the toilet paper shortage?
Yeah.
In the fact that we were buying the same product in a different form at a higher price, and it changed the supply flow.
Yeah.
What I mean is that we were ordering so much online, and the producers of toilet paper make more money making cardboard. So that's just the way the world went.
Yeah.
So in this next shape of like, or reiteration of what we're going to see, because we've been trying to decode this by looking at history and saying things like, oh man, like what's going to happen? What's going to happen? Because coming out of, I think it was the Spanish flu was the roaring 20s. Right. But right into, the 30s, not so roaring, right? Great Depression. And then all of a sudden the world went to war. And did we just skip the 20s and 30s?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, different times, right? I think the thing that everyone needs to realize is we're fighting a war that's never been fought before in a way that it's never been fought. We've got a really bad actor in Vladimir Putin. And what he's doing is just, it's disgusting at every level. And we're seeing it. We're seeing the world react to that with, an asymmetric approach. Okay, we can't go fight with, soldiers. Well, how else can we fight? And we're fighting. We're fighting on every front we can. And I love the fact that Americans and Canadians are willing to pay higher prices at the pump to support the Ukrainian effort. And that's, it doesn't feel like that's what you're doing, but that's what you're doing.
Man, there's so much. All right. You got to tell me what you've been hearing about this Ukrainian support, because I've heard some awesome stuff, right? Yeah. Like I've heard that in Ukraine, for, I think it was days, the only available television was the Ukrainian national anthem, right? Like their television systems were hacked. I've also heard that Airbnb has been pulling their fees on any Ukrainian listing. Yep. So by renting an Airbnb in Ukraine right now, it's not like you're expected to go, but the money will go directly to them with no fees to Airbnb.
Yeah, and Airbnb is letting refugees stay in the Airbnbs. And so there's subsidized housing brought to you by Airbnb. There you go. Attaboy. Good job right there.
Yeah, and Elon bringing in Starlink, right? Another private company, another leader that just steps up. This happens over Twitter.
Yep.
That he's tweeting back and forth with Ukrainian leadership, and then says, "You know what? We're going to ship something to you."
Yeah, and camouflage it. By the way, he put that tweet out there too. Did you see that? He said, "Make sure you camouflage the link towers, little mini link towers he sends out." Yeah. But look, Taylor, it goes so much further. Right? I mean, every company in the world right now is saying, how can we support it? What can we do? And by the way, if you're not doing that, you need to look hard at what you're doing as a leader in an organization right now. How can we help? How can we help our Ukrainian fellow Ukrainians at home? Edmonton's got a huge amount of Ukrainian population, as you well know. How can we help? Like we learned last week at the community level, right? But look at some of the other examples. Microsoft's threat center went off 2 hours ahead of the first threats coming out of Russia and the cyber attacks that they launched. It's all out there, and I don't know if we have that clip or not, but Microsoft just stepped up and stepped in immediately. Musk is sending, there you go. Yeah. And just look at that. Like, this is a company that put country first. Is Ukrainian government a client? Probably, but they said, we're not going to wait. We're going to go take care of our client. And this is the kind of example. And it goes much, much further, much further. You look at the SWIFT banking system, the international banking system, no longer accessible Russia. You look at airspace shut down all around Russia. You look at logistical supply chains in and out, not happening. Oil and gas excluded. We need to fix that loophole. We are fighting a united front, and the citizens of Russia are already starting to feel that pain. Sanctions is one thing, it's rhetoric, but collected, asymmetric, coordinated attack on every economic element of a country whose main resource is 11% of the global market of oil and gas. You want to have a leader in place that's a bad actor? This is what it feels like when you do things like this. And this is a practice now that's just going to get tighter and tighter. I love what we're doing right now as a world. I wish we would do more. And I really wish our fellow people in Mexico and in China would join the fight.
Yeah, when we take a look at like the reasons that this is so powerful is like if the world sits aside like they are right now, because we see companies stepping forward, we see tariffs, but we have some of the largest powers in the world that are essentially like just sitting at distance, not entering the fight for fear of nuclear consequence or whatnot. But really, I think that sends a dangerous message because we have other major entities like China taking a look at places like Taiwan saying, okay, if Russia's allowed to have Ukraine, we're next, right? Yeah. We would also want this. Yeah, and also under the guise of conflict of this, it makes other possibilities like that more likely.
Yeah, I think the United States fights that war in Taiwan, and I don't want to see the United States be at war with China. This podcast becomes meaningless if that happens. I mean, I got to tell you, that's a bad day for the world, right? So hopefully that's avoided, right? Hopefully diplomacy. Hopefully China realizes how economically reliant they are on the United States and vice versa. And this is an ego play. There's not a strategic advantage to Taiwan. There, you may say there is, but let's hope that doesn't happen. That's a plea, right? But to your point about, Ukraine and the world balance in some of these governments, there's a lot of movement in some of these governments too, Taylor. I'm gonna, Angela Merkel, her book, The Chancellor, great book if you haven't read it. She really wanted her 16 years, 10 years prime minister in Germany, peace. Let's make reparations for the past and let's be a peaceful country. And Germany's gone all the way to considering sending surface-to-air missiles to Ukraine. That's a long way for that government to go and have a conversation. Nothing yet, but high hopes on that, right? Right. And I think, Sweden and Finland wanting to join or considering no longer being neutral and joining NATO. I mean, if you look at what's happening here and the puzzle that's happening around Ukraine right now, it's a worldwide rally with the exception of China and Mexico and, of course, Iran.
Okay, this causes a fear response. Okay. So in the majority, if we say, all right, these are some of the real issues, it's almost like in a car accident where initially you have to consider that the car comes into contact with whatever it hits. But then there's the secondary impact, which is everything inside the car hits the front of its restraints or the front of the inside of the cabin. And then finally, the one that we really need to cushion is all the organs inside your body hitting the front of your body, right?
Right.
So we would say that maybe the war is the car impacting whatever it hits. But that second impact is basically going to manifest itself as a fear response in everybody around us.
Yeah.
So we're probably going to get some road rage reaction in general or slightly elevated stress situations.
Yeah.
How do you so you're talking to leaders right now that need to make changes. And I think that maybe your job has changed a bit, where it used to be a situation where you were making changes in a static situation or more of a static situation than what we have now. And now it must be just trying to withstand the changes from outside. How are you helping people with these fear responses?
Well, the answer is culture. So if you build a resilient culture, it can adapt to sudden change. So rather than problem spotting what's out there, geopolitically, supply, whatever it is, you have a culture that can absorb any type of change. You have an enterprise that says, now what? And has a quick reaction force element to that. And then it has a longer term mission driven objective and toolkit to use to take care of sudden change. So in the organizations that I work with, we don't have problems. There are no problems. We call problems opportunities. In every problem, there's an opportunity. Ukraine, that's a problem. What's the opportunity? Well, one of the things we can do is we can really rally behind our Ukrainian community with our business and really ask them what they need and really support them. And what has that done? Well, let's start with employee retention. Let's start with buy-in for purpose. Let's start with, and if we have a record quarter, can we donate? If we drive revenue to 1 to 1.5x, can we donate a portion of that? And leadership says, sure can. Idea came from the culture up, not leadership down. So in order to operate and lead an organization of any size or shape today, your culture needs to be adaptive and receptive to treating all challenges or problems as opportunities.
I think that that's a pretty powerful statement, is to, I think it starts with mapping it out. So many people don't measure this and don't say, okay, there's going to be strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, or threats. What's happening here before the reaction? That observation piece seems to be what people rush past right to decision and action. Mm-hmm. But then there's always that orientation, because sometimes the way that once you have the information and you're able to orient, you realize that there is going to be not a direct impact that you can anticipate, but there's a lot of supply chain challenges. And those things could lead to real significant threats. Like if one of the people that you depend on goes out of business, that could also mean that for you. So really understanding if these things are going to be potentials and kind of gaming them out is a big spot. But after that, I think that what you're talking about is taking action. So this stuff moves quickly. Those opportunity windows open quickly.
It's absorption. If we can absorb what's here and now, and it's absorbed into the enterprise, and the enterprise continues to thrive, if that's just normal operating procedure to just take what's in front of us because it's there now, it means we're looking further beyond that and we're problem spotting out there. And so supply chain disruptions, you say that everyone suffered. Amazon still delivered. Amazon still increased its Prime memberships. Amazon is a great example of a company who can absorb the change and move forward. And this is an example you see up here on the screen. Amazon will close bookstores, 4-star and pop-up retail outlets to focus on grocery and fashion. Well, this is the classic Jeff Bezos two-way door decision. We try something, it doesn't work, reverse it. This is a company that can adapt and isn't entrenched in ego. This is a company that says, well, worldwide supply chains are disrupted, but what if we went and bought airports? And what if we bought cruise ships and cargo ships? What if we did that? And that's because in great organizations, you don't think inside a box and you don't think outside a box. You think as if there's no box at all. And you consider every possibility, regardless of its grandeur. And that's the kind of thinking we need in our companies today. We have to empower that. We have to bring the imagination back into the equation, and we need to do it relentlessly.
I know at Disney they actually have a role called Imagineers.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And this is something that a lot of people don't ever take time to consider, is just like what's possible. It's just like what we were talking about previously with hiring people instead of just hiring for a position.
Yep.
Then you get to think like, what's possible here? What would be the best outcome to this relationship? Not just like, how much can you do this task set?
Yeah.
I think that this is something that can be scaled in so many different ways. But now when we take a look at what's in front of us right now, I think that when we consider what's possible, we would have to think one statement comes to mind. What would you do if you weren't afraid?
Right. And what's funny is if you really look at it from a global balance sheet perspective, companies are sitting on more cash, talking about the bigger ones now, or more access to capital, right? Which is cash, just not yet converted. right, than they've ever had before. And they're still scared of making a mistake. They're still thinking, I can probably get away without hiring that extra person. Instead of saying, if I don't hire 2 extra people, I'm going to lose 3 because I'm overworking them.
Man, I hate to the opportunity cost is so apparent here.
Yeah.
If you have a bunch of cash that's subject to inflation, you're actually losing money already. So in this, like, if you don't put this into like opportunity, then you're going to be subject to the cost, right? The whole theory.
Yep.
So really, when you see companies sitting on capital right now, what would you say would be like the first 3 opportunities to look around for?
Yeah. Invest in your people, invest in your process, invest in your place. Start with your people. How can I invest in my people? And a lot of small business owners, and I had a nice chat with a gentleman earlier this week. I'm already paying them $15 an hour and they're going to raise the minimum wage to 17, right? Why? Well, I don't care why. I can't pay them. Why not? You know, you start to have these breakdown questions. Of, I guess you're right. I guess it does cost them an extra $30 a week to get to work. I guess you're right. I guess they're not just hosing me here. I guess it actually costs more money for them to live, not just me. And so people, and your investment in people starts with an investment in you, the leader. Take a look at yourself. Who are you? How are you? What are you working on? And how can I do it better? And what you'll find is a universal answer. Let your people help you. These aren't your burdens to bear. Ask your people. What do you think we should do? Doesn't mean you have to do it, but you've included them in the decision-making process. So the investment in people doesn't necessarily cost cash. Investment in your processes. How can we do this better? This is a fun exercise for everybody. How can we do this better? Right now, we're saying, I ain't got time to breathe, much less look at how we can improve it. Why don't you have time to breathe? Because we're inefficient. Because the volumes have increased regardless of the business, but our systems haven't evolved. People, process, place. Place is easy. Do we work in a fun place? Can I put a vending machine in here? Can I plow? This is a good one. Can I plow the parking lot so they can pull in after a snowstorm? I've had that one come up a bit, right? Things like that. People, process, place.
Yeah, so in order to basically make the improvements to a place, that has to be behind people because you got to talk to the people.
Right.
You know, you may find that the things that they are irritated by aren't even on your radar at all.
Right.
Or the things that you haven't changed before, it was because at the time you made the decision, you couldn't change them.
Right.
But now there's so much that wasn't possible 10 minutes ago, 10 weeks ago, or 10 months ago that suddenly is possible now, right? Like if you wanted, let's say that it made everybody's life easier if they could scan a QR code in the office and get the Wi-Fi password, right?
Yeah.
Good luck doing that 3 years ago.
Right.
Right. But now everybody can do that.
That's right.
And so in my marketing company, we're using a lot of QR. Yeah. And you know what the craziest thing is that those QR business codes, this is wild. We have these for my real estate company, and there's various different levels of this. But one of my teammates was telling me about this the other day. We have this cool card, and this is the one made by Vice. And then when you turn it over, even through this screen, you could scan this QR code right now with your phone and get my contact information. So he was hooking people up on Zoom, grabbing that right now.
Put it up there. Let me do that. Put it up there.
Now I have so we got to see if this is, I'm going to have to play here and make this big enough for you.
Yeah.
So
How's
here
that
you go.
Live broadcast, right? Up, keep up, yep, up.
So now I got to get it in focus.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Let's see if I get it. I got it.
All right. So it actually functioned.
Yeah, it actually functioned, and here it comes.
And now
it's right now, and that's what I see, buddy. That's what I see. Look at that.
All right. So these are the things that are possible now that weren't possible before, and there's so many people that just aren't. They're just not aware of that. For those people joining us on the audio podcast, what we successfully did here is, Scott, you're probably like at least 1,000 miles from me.
I think so.
And, without you having to record anything and just using the camera in your hand, we used my tap business card, which would tap someone here. But the scan on the back of it was able to just translate just like that.
Yeah.
So this is going to change things inside and outside of your business. And there's things that you couldn't have solved before that you can now. So I wonder, is this the time to really go through those steps that you were just describing, Scott? So take a look at your people, and would you be looking for pain points? Is that the primary thing that you're focused in on?
Yeah, I love these types of questions, because these are the types of question where leaders are saying, okay, what do I do next? Or what do I do first, right? Yeah, that's the interesting part here. And it starts with one mindset shift in your mind. Just one. You think that the world is full of more problems than ever before. Instead, think this world has more opportunities than it ever has before, and bring that mindset to work.
Yeah, I could definitely understand how that would be effective, because honestly, if you, like, I remember when I bought my last car, suddenly it was revealed of everyone else that owns that car, especially if it was the same color. I wouldn't have noticed them in traffic before I started to get interested in them, and now all of a sudden they're everywhere. And so that's the same thing as if you're subscribing to problems. If you just picked that up and like everything's full of problems, pandemic and war, well, then that's what your experience is going to be. And the only thing you may be able to effectively see is more problems.
This war in Ukraine is atrocious and disgusting and disheartening and abhorrent. What can we do at ABC Electric as the owner? What can we do to help support local Ukrainians in our market? What ideas do you guys have? Well, we could donate a percentage. Good. Let's figure that out. What else can we do? Well, I guess there's a bunch of them coming in. I guess we could get ready for them. And, anybody who's taken someone in their home, call us for, for special pricing. Ooh, that's a great idea. Let's get that on the radio. What else can we do? And so the problem has become an opportunity for us to do good, to feel like all of us feel like we're helping in our own little ways.
So even if you're a big corporation, at some point, people still see you as being a member of their community. And so if this is what's taking place in everyone's home, which is what this is, like the entire world's attention is here. As a marketer, I spend a lot of time in places that other people my age don't, like TikTok and other places like that. And I have to say, it's kind of disruptive as you're scrolling through your feed, and it's like people dancing, and then rocket launchers. Right. This seems to be it's very like sudden, and you kind of get afraid when you see this stuff on the war, because you're like, oh wow, am I about to catch like a 30-second video of something really traumatic, right? Yeah. And so this keeps everybody in this like kind of alert state, this like response. So I was talking to a friend that's practicing Lent right now, and she was saying that the thing that she's giving up is toxic media. So this type of reaction, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't know that you have a lot of control online. Like you should spend a little bit of time in the settings in places like Facebook and LinkedIn, because you can actually curate your own experience.
Yep.
And you can do that in other ways too. So for example, if you wanted to, let's say that you just wanted all the ads in your life to be maybe of boats, have a few conversations with your friends about what it would be like to own a boat.
Right.
Right. A bunch of boat ads, right?
Right. Apparently I need a new watch is what social media has been telling me for the last week. And I don't. I love my watch. It was a gift from my son-in-law and my daughter. So I don't need a new watch, but I must have mentioned it somewhere.
It's so funny how these algorithms are really sensitive. So what you subscribe to is what you're going to see. So if you see yourself checking out a lot of shock and awe, well, guess what you're subscribing to and what all the systems are going to feed back to you.
Yeah.
So if you notice any one of your family members that's maybe spiraling down into these very polarizing and beliefs, and they become agitated, you may want to help them with their online experience. That might be something that they can't see, that they've wandered into an echo chamber of destruction.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. Parenting. So I have a unique perspective, right? I know you've got a couple of daughters. Well, I have 2 daughters as well. One of them is 24 years old. The other one is 2. So I have a unique perspective on parenting and the difference of 24 years ago and today. And it is a completely different animal. In fact, I think that they're not of the same species, those 2. The young one, Charlie, who's downstairs, I call her Charlie Tsunami. But we're going to have to really educate and immerse ourselves in their experience, not control it, please. And by no means do we want to monitor it. We want to build trust with our kids. We want to trust them to make good decisions, but verify. But if we can immerse ourselves in their settings and show them how they can curate what they want to see, then we're actually seeing what they're seeing that they wanted to see. So we can actually change and control the narrative through settings. I encourage parents to say, all right, I'm not going to be all over you. Like, what are you looking at? And show me your history and all that. Let's look at your settings together. What do you like that you see? Let's pick that in settings. What don't you like that you're seeing? There's your transparency. Ask.
Yeah, it's like you can order an infinite universe from the genie that is the internet, but be careful what you ask for.
That's right.
Right? Because it will deliver pretty much every time.
That's right.
Sometimes when you get to the end of the Google search field and you're about to hit search, it should give you some type of warning.
That's right.
Are you sure?
That's right.
Especially for that stuff that could be could have words in it that could be a different connotation.
Right. And we all have friends. Everyone listening today, you and me, every one of us has friends who's gone down that rabbit hole, who has become a victim to that narrative that they've created by what they've subscribed to. And their point of view is changed and radicalized one way or another, or in a particular direction, because of that very experience. Right? So we've all seen it. No one doesn't know somebody who doesn't have somebody and know someone that's in that rabbit hole.
Yeah, and it's these cycles of cueing us for response and threat response. And we also like to cue each other on that. When you take a look at the comments on different things, I wonder if this is what it was like when humans were becoming human. During that evolution, when I was growing up, they were like, there was a missing link. There was something between the monkeys and us. And now you get to this point where you're like, parenting, you have a 0 on the end of the difference between your daughters than I do. I have 2 years, you have 20 years between your daughters.
Yeah.
And when you take a look at how parents were back then, or even 20 years before then, you start to wonder about our species, right?
Yeah.
Because if you were to take those people that maybe even were considered popular at their time, like Sean Connery, probably one of the last people to hit a woman on screen.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so if you were to just start them over again, what they would refer to is off tone, know?
Yep.
And so you can't take that same group and move them here. It's almost like we've evolved as a social system. And I think that the next step of this is even more transparency. So how much tolerance are we going to have for how much we know about each other? We're going to have to forgive so much, because the old game was just show the perfect part of you. And the new thing is show everything. And we just have to be numb to some of the stuff that we all got that we're not proud of.
Well, 2 things. First of all, that's where you get caught in the evolution. Sean Connery is definitely not the last male to hit a female on screen, because now females are kicking the crap out of males, in all kinds of movies, and the girls are bringing the first hits, and they're bad. I mean, some of this stuff we're seeing, it's not that women can't fight. It's now we're capturing on screen. And I think that's important to remember, right? It's how far we've evolved, even through that era of don't hit a woman. Well, now women are like, come on, Come on. And in these action movies, we're seeing some great scenes and some great, I mean, just think of Angelina Jolie, right? Just I think that's one of them. Salt's one of my favorites and stuff like that. But the other point that you make, though, Taylor, is about the evolution. And I believe that humanity is evolving through, into, and with, and absorbing social media as a part of our social fabric. I think we're learning all the things you and I are saying. If a year ago you and I were having this conversation on this podcast, they can't see my narrative. I put my privacy functions on. They don't know and now we've lived through Cambridge Analytica. And we've lived through these narratives. And now we can see fake news. And we can see when I say sweater and Alexa starts telling me I have a sweater. If I'd like to buy it, click here. And all those things in between. I think humanity, because I'm an eternal optimist, will evolve to learn to live with it, and then learn to live with it in a healthy manner.
See, I keep thinking that that's the case. And I guess what you might want to call an optimistic fatalist. I accept the fact that we're all going to die in a way that we probably don't accept, but I'm also resigned to the truth of the fact that there's beauty in that and in the moments before that. So I know it's a conflict, and if you get to know me, you'll understand that that's the tip of the iceberg. But but when we take a look at how people how we assume that this is that this has been made clear. So I'm walking out of my building and I see a guy that I normally see cruising around my building, and I have a little bulldog that comes with me everywhere. His name is Hugo. So we're going out to the bathroom and we see this guy, and he has a European accent. And I say hi to him every time I come out. Sometimes he pets my dog. And so Hugo comes around the corner and immediately big smile on this guy. Oh, good morning. And I mentioned, you sound like you're from Europe. Is everything okay? And he says, yeah. And I said, well, I'm sure you have family there, hey? And he says, yeah. And I was like, man, that's got to be tough. Because sometimes these people are in a struggle because they have family there and nobody here would understand, right? Nobody's checking in on them.
Yeah.
So I check on this guy and he responds and he says, yeah, he says in Belarus. And I said, oh, wow, that must be hard. And he says, it's hard to deal with all the fake news. I said, that's interesting. And in these interactions, I may not agree with that person's outlook, but I really am genuinely curious, because the thing is that this person's probably having phone calls with other people there. And I can't see from the outside if there's more to see or how deep the cover goes, right? Because not everybody has access to information like we do. The internet doesn't work the same way here that it does in other places. So we assume that everybody gets the same lens of perspective that's offered to us, and they're just dumb if they don't, right? If they don't use it.
Yep. I like to say there's no news in the truth and no truth in the news. And that's why, and that's why everything beyond it, you just got to read between the lines. The very first thing you should do when you're about to read an article is look at the source. Just start with the source. And do you believe it's a reputable source?
Man, Enyena was mentioning, so Enyena Okur was here last week, and he was talking about this Ground News app. And so all of a sudden, Joel comes up to me the next day. Joel's our live producer, and he comes up to me the next day, and he's like, you got to check this out. Yep. And I'm like, man, that's really neat. And the thing that I've been looking for now is where there's gaps.
Yep.
So what this app does is it basically shows you which side of center the article is written in, because obviously the prepositions and everything used, you can see how things are basically looked or viewed from there. But the cool thing is it also shows you when one side isn't covering that at all.
Yep.
But that just means that you have to go and find it. Like, that's the thing that, you can't just, I understand you could be upset. Well, the left isn't talking about this at all, but they need somebody that they would accept to deliver it to them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first of all, I downloaded Ground News after Nye talked about it right after we got off the call. And I look at I canceled my Wall Street Journal subscription, digital, $36 a month. for Ground News, which is free, and I gladly pay a subscription price for it. Let me be clear. Really good source of news, and it does coagulate or aggregate from any source, and then it does tell you whether it's right, left, or center. And you see that a lot of times you go in to check it and there's nothing new. That's because there's nothing new. That's the news. So when I now have a better perspective on the events are slowing down, not the reporting of the events, but the events are slowing down. I think there's truth in that. So I agree with you that, and there's to our point that we're evolving into it a little bit. But I want to go back to something you said when you go out and you have an interaction with this gentleman from Belarus. You make the concerted effort to engage. That's where we're missing coming out of COVID right now, is we've got to get back to engaging. We've got to get back to our hellos. How are you? We've got to get back into those social interactions, to use your words. That's when the real healing begins from what we've all been through and what we're all going through.
And that's actually what threat assessment looks like. So people seem to think that threat assessment is carrying a gun or showing people that you're carrying a gun.
Yeah.
No, I'm going to assess threats by showing them not to mess with me. Where really like a casual conversation from someone who actually feels like they're going to be heard will give you everything you need to know about threats.
And not only to that person, but the immediate surrounding area every time.
Totally. So these things I find super interesting, and I keep hearing this thing about the news that we were just talking about. So yesterday morning, I'm on this social audio app called Clubhouse, and I'm in a room with Joe Foster, which is one of the two founders of Reebok. And he was talking about his mentor and the guy that literally gifted him machines in Ireland to just like use, and then when they were done, give them back, was this guy's rule. But he was also talking about reaction to news and how he makes sure to seek multiple sources of news. And the same thing, as the Ukraine war broke out, I sought social audio to get some perspective, and I got to listen to a Green Beret. And what he was saying, the same thing is like as he's surfing through channels, he's hitting CNN, Fox, and everything in between. Because he says you can only get their perspective, and you must need many perspectives to form your own perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what you just said, the Reebok co-founder, and his mentor, and how this gentleman at the heart of the community lent the machines, returned the machines. That's the heart of the story. And the heart of every story normally is a place you want to get to with the people around you. What's the story behind the story? European, Belarus, heart of the story. How difficult it must be to be the victim of fake news, because that's all you see in your narrative, which you have curated yourself, by the way, possibly. And what is the real news? And that's the heart of the story, is someone who's really struggling for clarity.
And that's also a great way to segue to actually what's going in the news, because a big part of what we want to accomplish with this, with our podcast here, is to talk about some of these new news items that are coming up, and not so much as to giving you one lens of perception. More so by sharing the way that we break down perception. And that's why we ask so many people about what's going on. I know that you might see some headline shock, and what we ask is that Scott kind of decodes some of these articles as he gathers them for us. And then what we do is bring people in here, specifically tell them in advance, we're not going to tell you about anything because we want to see how you think. What people are looking for is to resist that reaction and to get into that mental place where they can do what I call an OODA loop: observe, orient, decide, and then act, to get that response. So what do you got for us this week, Scott? We've got Biden and allies coming for Russian billionaires' yachts so far tracked down 52.
So Forbes tracked down 52. And,
is that 52 or 32? 32.
Is that a 3? Thanks. So remember we talked earlier in the show about companies doing whatever they can possibly do to help the cause.
Yeah.
Here's a media company. That's a frontline move. You're looking for their yachts? Here you go. Because everybody that's a billionaire gets Forbes, and most of them want them delivered on their oligarchy yachts. Here they are. Here's their coordinates. There you go. That's asymmetric warfare right there. That's a great example of it. Congratulations to Forbes. Please go find the rest of them.
Do you ever hear about the kid that used to track Elon Musk's private jet?
Yeah, the gal, she's tracking the yachts now. Same thing.
What can I do? It's a young man, and he is so Elon ended up offering him $5,000 to stop.
Yeah.
And what he's doing is he's taking public data from transponders that were required throughout the world after 9/11. And what he did is he just coded a little computer hack that takes any type of registration and turns it into a tweet. So after he got attention from basically showing us where some of the wealthiest people were traveling to constantly, he's now doing the same thing for the private jets of the people that are fleeing Russia to hide their money and themselves in other places. And it's brilliant. So now you're seeing some things happen. Like I saw the other day, somebody had walked up to a place in the UK where a Russian oligarch lives and changed the front door sign to talk about like basically like the moral of it was like wearing a t-shirt that says like, ask me about Ukraine, you know. That was the message. And pretty brilliant.
And look, Sun Tzu, The Art of War, if you make assets out of your enemy's best assets, then you'll win that war. These oligarchs, it's their turn to speak up. The billionaire who owns the Chelsea soccer team is selling it. Proceeds are going to help Ukraine. I mean, it's just story after story after story after story. And that's why I say we've never seen a war like this, and a war like this has never been fought. And what we're all starting to realize is the most powerful piece of modern warfare is a keyboard.
Yeah, keyboard warriors unite. Is that how this works? It doesn't work. They don't unite. It's a weird thing. They're like solo animals.
Yeah, agreed.
But the hackers have united. You know that trick with the Ukrainian anthem? That was a really neat trick, and we're seeing this continue as they struggle with basically like any type of communication. So interesting to see how things are coming that way, but also a bunch of people going there. I heard 80 former Japanese soldiers, former Canadian sniper. Like there's literally people that are flying into Poland with like to just be like, hey, I'm here. Like, where do I sign up?
Yeah, and I think I and again, fake news, I don't know. I think I saw, but I thought it was on ground news. There's 16,000 troops, volunteers is the number so far and growing. And this is it. It's the things that bring us together. It's a problem, and we are making it a worldwide opportunity to do the right thing. It is the absolute definition of good versus evil. It is the world versus Dr. Evil. That's what's happening right now.
Well, I think it's a big reminder to everyone that the Cold War didn't end. It just kind of moved, right? And it's been moving around for a long time. Now you also I think we have one more. Oh no, we did the other two early. Look at me giving early cues. Sorry about that, Joel. So when it comes down to taking a look forward here before we close, I keep trying to calculate the time, right? Like for me, I'm actually so worried about Ukraine that I keep trying to think like, how am I going to know when they've resisted enough? Because we're now around 22 days into this, somewhere in there. And really, I think that when we take a look at some of the fastest occupations, we'd have to include things like France and Poland, and those are both over 40 days, I think. How do we so one is, when do we know if this is like going to de-escalate? And also, like, what do you see into the future? When we take a look at our quarters here, we are kind of staring into Q2 right now. And where do you think that leaders should be focusing their vision?
Yeah, 3-foot world, what they can control, what's right in front of them, absorb the changes in the marketplace, have dynamic pricing models in place. And I say big terms like that, and small business owners goes, what the hell does that mean? It means you charge $2. Go ahead.
Dynamic pricing, instead of raising the price of the drink, change the size of the container.
Good.
Right? Like this is what we're talking about when we say dynamic pricing. We're saying pricing in ways that are not on the price tag.
That's right. Well, but also, and I think the thing to remember is if you charge $2.50 for a slice of pizza and you were making great money in the fourth quarter, lower your price to $2.25 so that the same number of people buy slices. So when you get into that more price conscious mode, be willing to sacrifice something on the margins in order to meet the consumer where he or she is in the buying decision. And that goes back to what we talked about before, value conscious versus price conscious. I think that's where you need to be focusing right now. And then the other thing is great opportunity to connect with your best clients. And I always define best clients as every client, and just check in. Hey, how are you? How you doing? Get your salespeople out there. Get your cashiers out there. Everybody, how are you? Check in with your clients, whether they drop off their dry cleaning or they pick up their kids from daycare or they buy corporate jets. Check in with your clients. How is all the world's change affecting you? How is coming out of COVID affected your organization? Get to know your clients better. These are the times where they want to talk. They have as much interest in how your company is doing as you have in them and theirs.
And also understand the value of those relationships, because as much as every client's your favorite client, I bet you you can name 3 off the top of your head that are not. And really, when it comes down to taking care of your people, which you said was super important, that's by teaching people how to treat them. So if you have any clients and you're going to have to tighten your margins, like you're going to have to take down and go down to like 2.25 instead of 250, well, then in that case, decide who you're going to carry with you. Because at 250, you might have some inconvenient clients that you shouldn't be selling hot dogs to at 2.25. Right? Yep. Maybe it's a good time to refer them out before you move in this direction, because if the price of your relationships change, your ideal client might get a little bit tighter. Their profile might be tighter.
That's right. And we go back to what I talked about before, absorption. This is all about absorption. How do we absorb the price increases? How do we absorb all these disruptions? What is our ability, our resiliency to absorb sudden change, or more difficult change that's moving and it keeps moving and keeps moving and keeps moving, like a long drawn out conflict in Ukraine?
Well, I really appreciate you capturing that for us. And thank you so much. Scott, you've been amazing as always in keeping us informed on what's coming in the future. And I appreciate that you share your knowledge with us. I'm here with Scott Connors, Chief Change Officer at Crankset Group. For all those companies that are making amazing changes or that are looking down the pipe and saying, you know what's going on in the world is going to shape our environment, this is someone you may want to get in contact with. I get to steal him weekly, but you guys can have him at a phone call. And my name is Taylor Hack. I am the Marketing Strategist from Gravidia, and we really appreciate you. We're going to see you next week.
Thanks, everybody.